Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everyone. So, before we going to present the topic, I will introduce my group member, which is me, Sarah Amila binti Zakaria, Emalisa James, Damia Bushira, Nur Awadah, and Novafika Hanis. So, today, our group will cover the topic of responding effectively to inappropriate misbehavior. So, before we proceed to the main topic, we need to understand what is the misbehavior first. Student misbehavior can be defined as student actions or interaction that disrupt or distract the flow of learning process. So, to control the situation, teachers need to take an action to dealing with this. First of all, we go to the principle for dealing with the inappropriate behavior. First of all, we go to the principle for dealing with inappropriate behavior. That is important to consider first before any action is taken. There are 6 principles overall, which is: first is to choose disciplinary strategies that are consistent with the goal of creating a safe and caring classroom environment. Second is to keep the instructional program going with a minimum disruption. Next is to consider the context in deciding whether a particular action constitutes misbehavior. Later, be timely accurate when responding to inappropriate behavior. Then, match the severity of the disciplinary strategy with the misbehavior you are trying to eliminate. And lastly, be culturally responsive, because different in norms, values, and styles of communication can have direct effect on student behavior. So, for the first principle, it is important to choose disciplinary strategies that are consistent with the goal of creating a safe and caring classroom environment. It's important because when students feel safe and feel that someone is caring for them, they will feel more appreciated and easy to lean in positive behavior. So, the ways that can be taken is to talk with them calmly and quietly. Don't ever talk with them rudely. Later, don't ever bring up negative past events, especially some things that are sensitive to them. This can lead them to be more rude and lose trust to you as a teacher. Believe me, no one likes it when someone brings up their past sins. Then, don't blindly attack students. Investigate first and ask them first why they misbehave in the classroom before decide the punishment. And lastly, instead of asking them in front of their peers, meet them privately. Ask them calmly why they misbehave. This is important to encourage them to give honest answer. Second principle need to remember is always keep the instructional program with a minimum distraction. But it is hard to make sure the classroom always in the calm situation, because sometimes there are some students will misbehave in the classroom, and it can be serious when teachers just ignore it. So, to avoid these situations, you must try to anticipate the potential problems and head them off, such as if you decide that a disciplinary intervention is necessary, you need to be more blatant as possible. Then, for the third principle is that whether or not a particular action constitutes misbehavior depends on the context in which it occurs. It is important to detect and decide whether some action done by student is considered as misbehavior or not, and it also depends on school rules.
Ali, dari tadi lagi cikgu nampak kamu makan. Mengganggu kelas saja. Cikgu nak kamu ludah semula gula-gula kamu tu.
As example, in the situation before, Ali is seen eating candy when the lesson is going on. It is constituted as misbehavior. It is disturbed a lesson. So, when determine a course of action, you need to ask yourself either it distracting or benefiting the lesson or not, because sometimes students need to eat candy so that they can focus on the lesson. So always make sure either it's misbehavior or not, because if you are too sensitive, students will distance themselves from you and feel annoyed with you. The fourth principle is to be timely and accurate when responding to inappropriate behavior. Means that when you see that students misbehave in the classroom, do not take too long to respond. Remind students to stop their action at that time immediately so that they will not disturb the lesson further. If you does not care or late to take action, other students will feel uncomfortable during the lesson from start to finish. Then we go to the next scenario.
Woi, sakit lah. Kenapa kau pukul aku pula, Ali? Ana, awak dah kenapa buat bising? Mengganggu kelas. Selepas ni jumpa saya kat pejabat.
Here we can see that Anna was blamed as misbehaved because she snapped at Ali for hitting her. Do not ever let this situation happen in your classroom. As a teacher, make sure investigate first before all the things that happen in the classroom. This is to make sure that the target is accurate. What it means by that? It means that the punishment need to be put to the students who make mistake first, so they will be more responsible. Don't ever let the wrong person escape from their mistake, and don't ever put blame to the wrong student because they will feel it's unfair. Next, always match the severity of disciplinary strategy with the misbehavior you are trying to eliminate. Means that when misbehavior happen in the classroom, you need to detect whether it's minor, serious, or never tolerate misbehavior. Always know the severity of it before carry out the punishment accordance with the level of misbehavior. As example, some things that should not happen is
Ha 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 ha. Woo 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 woo. Ali, cikgu nak kamu ikut cikgu ke pejabat. Kenapa cikgu? Nah, ambil surat ni. Surat apa ni cikgu? Surat tahan sekolah.
As we can see, it is fair that Ali got detention when he just making some noise in the classroom. Clearly, it's not fair at all because making noise in the classroom is considered as minor misbehavior. At least, he just need to get a warning from the teacher, and that is enough. If he being detained only for being a bit loud, worst can happen is that he will hate schools and don't want to talk anymore. We don't want to let that happen. So, it is important to make sure that punishment must be in accordance with the level of misbehavior. Always make it fair. And lastly, we need to always be culturally responsive because different norms, values, and style of communication can have direct effect on student behavior. We need to remember that each person are different from each other. Same with students. Each of them have different ways of thinking. Don't ever assume that they are same with us. As example, students from particular ways always acting rough because they see that roughness is equal as power in society. Why is that? Because they always believe in it. That's why sometimes they cannot change their perspective because they go with it. That is why it is important to always understand the background of your student, especially about their ethnicity, race, religion, and etc. Always doing some research about them by asking how their everyday life, how they see some things, always asking them about their perception about some things and many more. So, as a teacher, don't mad when you have different views from your students. When they doing some things that you see rude, ask them first whether they realize what they do are they respectful or not, because before you carry out the punishment. If you think it's form of misbehavior, just remind them. And that's all for principle for dealing with an inappropriate behavior. Now we go to how to dealing with misbehavior. I will pass the presentation to Emelisa James.
There are three major types of misbehavior. The first one is minor misbehavior. The second one is serious misbehavior, which is arguing, and the last one is never tolerate misbehavior, which is stealing or intentionally hurt. Next is I will explain about how to dealing with minor misbehavior, which is noisiness, socializing, or daydreaming. The first one is use a non-verbal intervention such as make facial expression, make eye contact, use hand signal, and move closer to the misbehaving student. One way to really bring in non-verbal intervention is in the use of visual. When you have a procedure or routine that you need to reinforce with your student, sometimes just telling them what you need is not enough. For example, you have a student who you have posed a question to your class and the student has blurted out an answer, but what you really need was a raised hand. If you have a picture of a student on your wall that has a raised hand that you can point to when that student blur out as a reinforcement of I need you raise hand without you having to tell them that you needed a raised hand.
Who can tell me how they get home? Thomas.
Bus number 11.
Good job.
The second one is use non-direct verbal interventions such as state the student name, incorporate the student name into lesson, call the student to participate, use gentle humor, and use an I message. For example, simply saying the student name might be enough to get the student back on task. If the misbehavior occurs during a group discussion, you can call on the student to answer a question. Calling on a student allows you to communicate that you know what's going on and to capture the student's attention without even cheating the misbehavior.
With math, but okay. Adding the sides or multiplying them. That's how, right? Yeah. Okay.
3, 2, 1. Lila, what did your partner think about geometry?
That it's like all the vertexes and it's like shapes and angles.
Okay. James, what did your partner say that geometry meant to them?
Geometry means like squares,
Okay.
angles, what the degrees of the angles are, and that's all.
All right.
The use of humor can provide another gentle way to remind students to correct the behavior. Use well, humor can show them that you are able to understand the funny side of classroom life, but you must be careful that the humor can hurt student feeling. An I message is another way to verbally prompt appropriate behavior without giving a direct command. I message generally contain three parts. First, the teacher describes the unacceptable behavior in a non-blaming and non-judgmental way. This often begins with when, which we say when people talk while I'm giving direction. The second part describes the tangible effect on the teacher, which the teacher say, I have to repeat the direction and that wasted time. Finally, the third part of the message states the teacher feeling about the tangible effect, which the teacher say, and I get frustrated. Next is use a direct verbal intervention, which is use as a sign comment. For example, when a student was going through her cosmetic case, we need to approach the student and quietly directly her to put all the mirror and start on the assignment. Can also remind students about rule or behavior expectation that been violated. For example, when someone is talking, everyone also supposed to be listening. Another strategy is to give students a choice between behaving appropriately or receiving a penalty for continued inappropriate behavior. For example, if you can handle walking in your group, you will have to return to your seat. It not only warns students that a penalty will be invoked if the inappropriate behavior continues, but also emphasizes that students have real choice about how to behave and that penalties are not imposed without reason.
SpongeBob, I've had enough of your nonsense. Now collect your things and move to the available desk in the back of the room.
The last one is choose a deliberate intervention, but if only misbehavior is minor and fleeting, which is always monitor the classroom. Make sure students aware that you are watching. For example, during a class, we notice a student lightly tapping a pencil on his desk while we was calling roll. It was obvious that we was aware of the tapping but chose not to respond, and the student stopped once we begin the lesson.
You know, yesterday, Pinky and Pankaj, they were talking in the recess. Sudhanshu saw it with his own eyes.
Talking, talking necklace, talking.
Hi, I am Cik Siti Damia. Now I will cover about dealing with more serious misbehavior. Dealing with more serious misbehavior is inadequacy to convince students by non-verbal or verbal reminder that is the serious about behavior expectations that the teacher established. It is about serious misbehavior expectations when they actually didn't want to respond what their teacher said. In this situation, a good educator must be a brilliant educator because they have to be patient deeply with the students who exactly don't want to follow the procedures in the classes. For example, the situation where the students came to school and they just sit and do with their own life without care what the teacher said and laugh when the teacher threatening them. The teacher will be easy to pressure when they get angry to them, and that's not a good way in this situation. Okay, let's talk about mandatory private conference. when students do not respond to nonverbal cues or verbal reminders, the teacher generally calls private conference. Often after school or during a free period, the teacher will directly express their disappointment in students' behavior and trying to adapt and solve this problem directly. The teachers also want to slow talk with their students about the problem and the flow why they react something like that. This is the root action students to teacher actually, but as a teacher they need to know why should the student being a bad habit in school. After that, we're gonna discuss about loss of privilege. Loss of privilege is taking something away from the students as a consequence when your students misbehaves. This kind of situation where the student lose the right to sit wherever they like, particularly if their behavior is having a negative impact on other students, which can be taken away include working with friends, having free time, chewing gum, and freely moving around the room. If you see loss of privilege, it is good to use strategies to encourage good behavior at the same time. If the students lose privilege as a consequence of challenging behavior, it means the student has to take responsibility for their behavior. This helps to learn self-discipline and means you won't be always the bad educator who hands out punishment. Then, isolation from the group. In this situation, if students are unable to work productively and commonly like other students, the teacher should take action by isolate them in one group to a specific place or room. The teacher needs to slow down their emotion and always try to be positive rather than negative about to move. For example, come to me and let's go to the back of the class and I will tell you something attractive. And now see what you can do back here where you can concentrate better. This will be your private office. This strategy can be better to students who are unable to concentrate well in the class and to them to suffer from attention. Moving temporarily to a secluded area of the room can provide a much needed opportunity to refocus. Exclusion from class is the point in dealing with serious misbehavior among the students. Some of the teachers believe that kicking kids out is the great strategy that should reserve for major disruptions. Students who want to go out at the time will do bad attitude which they're trying to provoke teachers for the main aim to go out from the classes. This is not the good way to teacher decide something worse to students. For example, they said, "You get out from the class, I don't want to see your face." That's not appropriate way to students because they automatically lose respect to their teachers. In other situations, some of the teachers force students to stand outside of the classroom in 15 minutes, so the teacher thinks this will be cool and be better to students back to silence. It is not be more conducive class when the teachers punish them like that. Despite the detention to students, the word detention in school always refers to the coming late to class, this is the caution from disciplinary teacher to students. If some of the students over than 3 times coming late to school, the teachers need to ask them privately or directly the cause of this problem. Here, the example in one situation, the cause of teacher punish the students without asking them coming late to class.
reflection on the problem, the teacher should take one way to students write an essay about their misbehavior and try to reflect on it. This is one of the way on how they realize and what the positive side should they proceed as a students in school. Whatever we do, it always comes with responsibilities as a student or teacher and as human in this world. It is not easy to adapt and contain the negative condition without any awareness. So, the serious reflection is a must to be a better students who always consider their duties. Next is contacting parents. For a part of contacting parents, this should be okay for calling their parents and tell them about their children's misbehavior. It is based on achievement and presentation that the students show to the teachers. The teacher can directly call their parent, which is the condition is the students repeatedly forget to do their homework or doing something out of discipline. A good teacher will contact their students' parents with gentleness but out of serious concern. They try to adapt with the situation, such as advise the parents to slow talk and monitor their students' work and make them like their friends to avoid parents feeling burdened. Besides, administration or parent contact should be with warning letter if affecting students' achievement and attendance to school. Not to mention about every school should have a plan for keeping schools safe and drug-free. In conclusion for this part is every teacher should not underestimate the students who always raise the problem in school. They also need the best possible guidance from their teachers to become a better human being. The teacher need to understand a students why they should work hard in school and always be disciplined at wherever they are. Next, I will pass to Nurafika Hanis Mursalim for the next topic. Thank you.
Then we dealing with chronic misbehaviors. Some students with persistently inappropriate behavior fail to respond to the routine strategies we have described so far, which is, for example, nonverbal cues, verbal reminders, and penalties. So what is the additional strategies that are available? So in this section, we are considered that they have two basic approaches. The first one is problem-solving strategy, which views inappropriate. We take a look at the strategies based on principles of behavioral learning. So, and then we examine self-management approaches. So, the first one is use problem-solving approach, which is most teachers think in terms of winning or losing when they think about classroom conflicts. This is according to the Thomas Gordon, which is author of Teacher Effectiveness Training in 2003. This win-lose orientation seems to be at the core of the knotty issue of discipline in schools. Some students with persistently inappropriate behavior fail to respond to the routine strategies we have described so far. In this section, we considered two basic approaches. The first one is problem-solving strategy, and the second is strategies based on principles of behavioral learning. Using a problem-solving approach, they have 6 steps that we have to be concerned about. The first one is define the problem. In this step, the teacher and the student must define the problem. And the second is brainstorms a possible solution. In this step also, everyone should be responsible to brainstorm the possible solution. In this step also, in all brainstorming activities, Suggestions are not evaluated in this stage. So in the step 3 is evaluate the solution. It is like take a look all the solutions that have been proposed and decide which we like and which we don't like. So do you have some preference? Stating your own opinions and preference is much important in this step. And the fourth step is you, which is a student, and which is the students and the teachers, evolves, decides on the solution that you will try. If more than one student is involved, it is attempting to vote on the solution, but that's probably not a good idea. Voting always produces winners and losers unless the vote is unanimous. So some people always produce winners and losers, which is leave the discussion feeling dissatisfied. Instead, try to work for the consensus. Once you decided which solution to try, let's move to the steps number 5, which is determine how to implement the solution. So then finally is a step number 6, which is evaluate the solution. We might want to call everybody together again and ask, are you still satisfied with our solution or whatever? Because it is important that everyone realize that decisions are not just laid in granite, and they can be discarded in search of a better solution to the problem. Behavioral learning involves students in self-management, which is the first one is self-monitoring. Some students might not realize how often they are out of their seats or how frequently they sit daydreaming instead of focusing on their work. So such students might benefit from a self-monitoring program in which they learn to observe and record a target behavior during a designated period of time. Interestingly, self-monitoring can have positive effects even when students are inaccurate. So it is a state from Graziano and Moni in 1984. For example, students can learn to change the number of math problems they complete during an in-class assignment, the number of times they blurt out irrelevant comments during a discussion, or the number of times they raise their hand to speak. Okay, number 2 is self-evaluation. Require individuals to judge the quality or acceptability of their behavior. This self-management approach goes beyond simple self-monitoring by requiring individuals to judge the quality or acceptability of their behavior. This is stated from Hughes, Ruth, and Misra in 1989. Sometimes self-evaluation is the link with reinforcement so that an improvement in behavior brings points or rewards. So the third self-management approach is self-instruction, in which students learn to give themselves silent direction about how to behave. Most self-instruction strategies are based on a 5-step process of cognitive behavior modification. The first one is an adult performs a task while talking aloud about it and carefully describing each part. Second is the student performs the task while the adult talks aloud. Number 3 is the student performs the task while talking aloud to itself. 4 is the student performs the task while whispering. And the last one is the student performs the task while thinking the directions. This is stated for My Compound in 1977. This approach has been used to teach impulsive students to approach tasks more deliberately, to help social isolates initiate peer interaction, to teach aggressive students to counter their anger, and to teach defeat students to try problem solving instead of giving up. And the last one is contingency contracting, which is a behavior contract is an agreement between a teachers, and the individual student that specifies what the student must do to earn a particular reward. Contingency contracts are negotiated with students, and both parties must agree on the behavior the students are to exhibit, the period of time involved, and the rewards that will result. To be most effective, contracts should be written and signed, and of course, there should be an opportunity for review and negotiation if the contract is not working.
Now dealing with Tony problems. This section will focusing on 4 sections of behavior that commonly occur in the classroom. So beforehand, what is Tony problem? So Tony problem is the root of study where teachers dealing with students' behavior and everything that happen in the classroom, and teacher have to take control over everything. Not exactly everything, but some of the good manner and good behavioral, and the way of teachers reflects towards the behavior of the students. First Tony problem is handling defiance, or known as insolence. This thing has to be put on the table where it happens commonly in the classroom, and as an educator need to always remain calm. It's how to overcome this kind of Tony problem and in whatever situation is. And next, move the student out of the other peers. So to have a better solution, first the teacher have to normalize correcting the student in a privacy way, because I believe, like for example, the teacher can direct the student, the problematic student, to the side of the classes and have a better conversation, because I believe even a small communication can fix a big problem. And as an educator, we have to acknowledge every single student's feeling and show a little empathy to them, because I believe that if you use a single assertion to them, it will show you that you are kind of a bossy teacher, not as an educator. And now let's hop into the next fun problem, which is dealing with failure to do an assignment. When there's a student that consistently fails to do the assignment, as an educator, we have to combine these 2 things, which is to tell them how valuable the assignment and have a better communication with the students. And never forget that the world we're living now is kind of move rapidly, especially the revolution is kind of changed from time to time. And as a teacher, you have to think something that out of the blanket and make a homework something that fun to do so. So the student that have a problematic with the failure to do the homework, we think that this is not only a homework that I've been pushed to finish off, and the student might think that this kind of homework is something that I can work with my mind in such of a creative way. And always require a product like the teaching aids, and never ever accept any excuses that came out from the student mouth, or in another easy word to say, never spoiling the kids. And now once again, let's move into my favorite part, is dealing with cheating. So how to have a better understanding on this part, which is dealing with cheating. So first thing, as an educator, you have to grab the problematic students and put him or her to the side, talk to her private way, in such a private way out of the other students. So after you caught the student that just cheat on exam, try to assure yourself that I need to do something that reasonable to do so, and explain to them the consequences of cheating on the examination. So let's have the visual of this tone problem that happened in the classroom.
I tried to freestyle cheat and get my test back, and blow, big old fat F. I gave up. I was like, bump it. I'm gonna fail this dumb class. I don't care anymore. But the next test that we had, I started noticing some sketchiness going on in the class. Questionable sounds, like people coughing and sniffling. How come Cheyenne always develops these flu symptoms every time there's a test? And then I saw it. She coughed, and then like 8 people around her all of a sudden would write down an answer. And then she'd sniffle, and the same 8 would write another answer. And I'm like, what the flux capacitor is going on here? This is a multiple choice test. These people are cheating. I look over at the teacher, totally oblivious as to what's going on. I'm like, bump this. Everybody else is cheating. They didn't include me on this. Oh no, it's not going down like this.
And as for the final thought problem, which is inappropriate use of electronic devices in the classroom. So let's recall in the chapter 5 before. So electronic devices become one of the ubiquitous and mandatory support system in the classroom because nowadays we live among the society that without a gadget, life is nothing. And I believe this kind of problem become one of an issue in the classroom, not only in the classroom, in every campus and college in the rest part of the world. So when you find out there's some of the students bring the smartphone to the classroom, try to have a relevant conversation with the students. You can ask the student to put the phone in the silent mode or flight mode and ask them to put it in the bag. I eagerly want to slip something on this section, which is whatever happened in the classroom, as an educator, always remain calm and never show your rage to the student because that's such of a thing it's really inappropriate to do so in the classroom. And have a professional manner and have a good advice to them and be a good example to the student. Before I put this presentation to the end, I would like to slip on something on this session where as an educator, we don't have to show a little rage to the student just to educate them, and always show a little, even a little professionalism way that student will refer on.